Okay, this is Megan Harmon, Chairman of the Churchill Borough Planning Commission. We're going to call the meeting to order. For all of you who are joining Zoom, so you know this meeting is being recorded. And we also have Diane Law, who's going to be here, and we have our solicitor and Richard Kelly, member of the Planning Commission as well. Gavin, did you want to say a couple words?
Sure. Before we start the presentation, I did want to let the public and the commissioners know that upon advice of council, Ms. Law, because she sits on Borough Council, we've recommended that she recuse herself from the debate, discussion, and vote this evening due to council's role in the curative amendment process. So should the text amendment that's being proposed this evening and discussed this evening not ultimately be approved by Borough Council, the next step that's in place right now would be a hearing before Borough Council on a curative amendment application that's been filed by Hillwood. So as a result of that, Ms. Law is here so that you do have a quorum, but she will not be, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, but she will not be participating in the vote or the discussion on tonight's agenda items.
That is my understanding. So for a quorum, we have Dick Kelly, myself, and Diane Law. That is the roll call. What we're going to do tonight is have a presentation by Hillwood, and we will let them control the screen for a bit. It's a presentation, and then we will open up the comment period for the public. What we've requested is that we keep comments to 3 minutes. This is not a debate with Hillwood or an engagement with them. This is for your comments, and at the end of the comment period, the Planning Commission will discuss the amendment in front of us and vote. Our vote goes to council. Our vote is a recommendation, yes or no. It is not a binding vote. It's merely a recommendation. So with that being said, we'll go to Hillwood and let them make their presentation. Tim?
Sure. Hi, can everyone hear me and see the screen share?
Yes.
Yes. All right, great. I'm going to kick it over to Leif just to start us off, and we'll take it from there. Looks like you're on mute, Leif.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commission members. Also, thank you to the solicitor and the borough manager and to all the members of the public who are joining us tonight. My name is Leif Metz. I'm an attorney at Buchanan, Ingersoll & Rooney here in Pittsburgh, and we represent Hillwood, and we're really excited to be here with you tonight to talk about this project and to hear the Planning Commission's thoughts and any commentary from the public as well. So this project relates to the historic Westinghouse site in the borough, right on Beulah Road that abuts Parkway. And Hillwood right now is under a contract to purchase that piece of land. And so we've been working with the borough for nearly a year and a half to help the borough understand what our project is, to undertake a number of due diligence studies at the borough's request to try to address some of the issues that the borough has raised. That's an ongoing process. So what we're here to talk about tonight is an amendment to the borough's zoning code. The facility that we're proposing to build on this site is a distribution center. And right now that use is not permitted on this piece of property. The Westinghouse site is in the borough's C1 zoning district, and distribution centers right now are only permitted in the C2 district. So the amendment that we have proposed to the borough would permit a distribution center in the C1 district also to enable Hillwood to develop the site for this distribution center. So what we have is a slide deck that we'll run through to show what the project is, what it's going to look like, some of the studies that we've worked on, And let me just quickly mention our team members who will be speaking at different points of the presentation. So Tim Pudwell, who you just heard from a moment ago, he is the project lead at Hillwood. Gary Frederick, who is the Senior Vice President at Hillwood and the regional leader for the Northeast, is also with us. My colleague, Sean Gallagher, who is another lawyer at Buchanan Ingersoll, is with us. AJ Schwartz at Environmental Planning and Design. And then we also have our engineers at Langen Engineering. We have Chris Prisk, who's our traffic engineer. We know that traffic is a key concern to the borough, and Chris will be talking about that. And also Chris Westbrook, who is our civil engineer, who will be talking about some aspects of the site planning. So that's our team. We thank you again for having us tonight and spending time with us, and I'll turn it back over to Tim.
All right, thanks, Leif. Appreciate the introduction and a little bit of history on the project here. And I want to start with saying thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. We're very appreciative of your time today and excited to talk to you about the potential redevelopment of the former Westinghouse Research and Development Facility. I want to start off by telling you a little bit about our Hillwood team and our local consultants that are dedicated to this project. It starts with our leadership, which is Gary Frederick and Michael Alderman. These guys have a combined 40 years of commercial real estate experience. Gary's been working in the Northeast since 2002. As Leif mentioned, I would be the project lead development director. I lead the day-to-day efforts for the development team. I come with over 15 years of construction and development experience, with the last 6 years focusing on logistics development throughout the Midwest and the Northeast. Most recently working on our 1 million square foot facility in Findlay Township that we completed just this past August. Our construction service team is led by Jim Whitehead, and alongside him is Dwight Lewis, who manages pre-construction for the Northeast. And additionally, as Leif mentioned, we've hired Langen Engineering for our traffic analysis, site and environmental engineering services. And as you know, we've got Leif on board from Buchanan, Ingersoll, and Rooney as our local counsel. We've been working on this development for about 1.5 years now, and throughout this time, we've been reaching out to local experts to find out what's important to them and ultimately gain their support of the project. To date, we've received positive feedback from everyone on this list, and in particular, a great deal of support from Governor Wolf, Senator Jay Costa, Allegheny County Executive Rich Fitzgerald, Allegheny County Economic Development Director Lance Shimka, and we've also spent time informing leadership at the Woodland Hills School District, Black Ridge Civic Association, the Port Authority, and PennDOT about the project. We're here today to talk about the opportunity we see located within the Churchill Borough at the former Westinghouse facility. The site is approximately 133 acres and large enough to accommodate the proposed multi-story, approximately 800,000 square foot distribution facility. Why we really see the site ideally suited for e-commerce is due to the prime highway access, proximity to such a large consumer base, as well as a large labor pool. Hillwood's commitment on a project like this requires a large investment that only certain types of developments can absorb. We are anticipating a $300 million in overall project costs, which is frankly a conservative number at this stage. And this site is going to require $40 to $50 million in upfront costs, which reflects a combination of the purchase price of the land and the extensive amount of remediation and demolition efforts needed to make the site developable again. There will also be a large investment in the current infrastructure surrounding the site by means of traffic improvements, which Chris Prisk from Langen will dive deeper into in a bit. And additionally, this development comes with community benefits starting with 1,000 to 1,500 full-time jobs, which 5% will be technical and managerial positions, at a minimum providing starting wages in the mid to high teens with full benefits package day one, along with an educational reimbursement program available to all employees. Last and certainly not least, there will be a considerable increase in the tax base, which Leif will expand on later. The former Westinghouse site has been dormant for nearly 20 years and is considered an environmentally challenged site based on previous operations and its current condition. What we're proposing is to replace the currently blighted site with a state-of-the-art e-commerce facility that will include a full landscape package upon completion, sound walls along the Greensburg Pike and Beulah Road to mitigate any sound impact around the site, and a multitude of ways to access the facility to minimize traffic impact on any one particular street. This view here highlights the northwest quadrant of the site. One item just to highlight here is what we're proposing to do is when you're coming in from the Parkway West, we have a slip ramp proposed here coming off exit 79A, Greensburg Pike, that will give you direct access into the site, which will help mitigate any traffic on local roads. This next slide here is just trying to give a little perspective on the current conditions and what we anticipate the site looking like when we're complete. This is looking from the Parkway into that same northwest quadrant. As you can see here, we're proposing to add a lot of landscape along the perimeter of the facility. Really a lot of greenery. One thing to highlight here is in the background, if you can see my cursor, you can see the top of the building, but what that means is that the building is sitting really low on the site. So the actual amount of building you'll see is relatively small in perspective to the size. This is a zoomed in view of the northeast quadrant. Chris will get into this a little bit more when he's talking about traffic, but one thing to highlight here, the major improvement over in this area is the proposed dual lane roundabout at William Penn and Beulah Road. And again, these are just before and after views, current conditions, and what we're proposing from a landscape perspective when you'd be coming into the site off of Beulah Road. I'm looking at the anticipated project schedule for development. I apologize, there's a couple errors on the sheet, but we're looking at a Q1 of 2021 start for demolition, not Q3. A Q1 of 2022 to start site and vertical construction improvements. Q3 for the offsites, which would include those traffic improvements I just mentioned. And Q3 of 23 for occupancy of the facility. When looking at any development, we always need to make sure that's a fit for the community. And part of that process is to complete a series of studies. For this site, we've completed our air quality, photometric, sound, wetland, home value, traffic, and economic studies. And these studies are currently in with the borough for review and comment. One study in particular I'd like to touch on is home values. Hillwood has hired a professional to complete a series of home value studies across the different developments that span across the United States to monitor the effect that they've had on home values. And what we've seen is a consistent increase in relation to the greater markets. Most recently, we've commissioned an independent study by Loudon Associates to focus on developments in the Northeast to support the findings as it pertains to general logistics and development. An analysis of 3 or more recent developments in the Kutztown, Manchester, and Carlisle markets gives perspective on median home values relative to the proximity of the facility, as well as the before and after outlook. When looking at each independent study, there's been a steady increase in home values across each market. These findings are consistent with what we've seen across the U.S. to support a steady increase in the home values. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Chris Prisk with Langen to talk about some of the proposed traffic improvements.
Thanks, Tim. Before I'll start, I just want to give you a little bit background. There's a few different facility types that this end user can use. One facility type is known primarily for the smaller vans, which deliver packages to your front door, which you might be familiar with. Another facility type focuses more on large tractor trailer use. and kind of distribution of the goods within those tractor trailers. And then this facility type is known primarily for the amount of employees and basically jobs that it generates. So a few different types. Just wanted to point out that this one is primarily employees going to work, minimal amount of truck traffic, and no vans at all associated with it. Something else to point out is the end user goes through painstaking detail to schedule their operations during the day, and they do it in such a way that the peak shift times for the employees occurs before your normal AM commuter time, so before you're normally driving to work, and it occurs after you typically would come home from work. And that's done purposely to lessen the burden of traffic on the surrounding intersections. And actually what we're seeing is those shift times are getting spread out even more and more. So it's not as concentrated even before and after the normal AM and PM peak times. So we went through and did an exhaustive traffic study, which was reviewed by Churchill Borough, PennDOT, and Allegheny County. We've been through a few different rounds of comments on that study, and we're just trying to finalize some last bit of comments and resubmit in the coming weeks. As far as the major offsite improvements that were identified, Tim kind of highlighted a little bit on these, but there is a new direct off-ramp proposed from the parkway directly into the facility. Yeah, thank you. The cursor there shows that. And like Tim mentioned, that will eliminate the need for Parkway East outbound traffic to have to go onto Greensburg Pike and then turn into the site. So it's a direct connection, which is very advantageous. One thing to note is that direct connection and the parallel road that runs all the way to Beulah would be turned over to be a local road. So that would not be private. So the direct connection of the ramp to Beulah would be a local road. And then the other significant improvement is the intersection of William Penn and Beulah, which we all know is congested at best right now. Doesn't provide optimal operations. And so the recommended improvement that we have there is a dual lane roundabout, which not only will address the impacts from the additional traffic from the development, but will also address the congestion that you're currently experiencing. So we feel that's an optimal solution. And as I've kind of pointed out before in the past, this would be the first dual lane roundabout in PennDOT District 11. So I think it'll kind of be a feather in your cap that you guys will kind of be trailblazers, so to speak. So that's why we've kind of received good support on the dual lane roundabout option. There are other slight modifications that are still being considered, mostly restriping efforts along Greensburg Pike and possibly William Penn at some of our intersections. Those haven't been finalized yet, but they're much more minor in nature. And then if you want to go to the next slide, Tim. This just kind of gives you an idea of the various intersections that we were tasked to analyze. Like I said, Churchill Borough, Allegheny County, and PennDOT all reviewed the study and basically directed us on what intersections to look at. And so all these intersections that are listed here, we've run through the appropriate analyses, and we've found that with the improvements that I described, and some other kind of minor signal adjustments, traffic operations will be acceptable in the area. So there's nothing else really of a concern after those recommended improvements are put in place. And I think that's it for me, Tim.
All right, thanks, Chris. Leif, do you want to touch on tax revenue?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you. So this is a part of the project that we are really excited about and really proud of. As Tim mentioned, the expected cost of the improvements Hillwood plans to construct on the site is about $300 million. And that would generate every year in new real estate tax revenue about $11.7 million total every year. And out of that, about $8 million per year would go to the school district, and about $1.4 million per year would go to the county, and about $2.3 million every year would go to Churchill Borough. So that'll be a meaningful increase in the borough's budget to help to address some of the totally unrelated long-term issues that we sometimes hear residents raise at borough meetings. For example, repaving streets and trying to mitigate some of the historic flooding issues. So this is something that we're excited about, and it's in the various conversations we've had with the school district, we know that this really moves the needle for them as well. $8 million a year to the school district really will go a long way to alleviating some of their challenges. Thanks, Tim.
All right, thanks, Leif. And Gary, do you want to touch on a little bit of Hillwood's history here?
Sure. Good evening. I'm Gary Frederick, Northeast Market Leader with Hillwood. We're very excited about the project because of we think it has the opportunity to transform a community that has frankly been dealing with a very large and not very productive use of that property. And we have a significant track record in projects of this type where we have obsolete industrial projects that can be transformed into something very meaningful for the community. That is a very important part of our business, and we have some very notable examples that I'll get into in just a minute. But currently, this is sort of a snapshot of our project, our activity in the e-commerce sector. As you know, e-commerce has been on a upward trajectory, and that has been accelerated with the pandemic, where more and more people are relying on e-commerce to get their supplies and the necessities of life. And so it has created a very strong demand for these type of facilities, particularly in places like Greater Pittsburgh market. And we think that Churchill's a particularly good fit for that because of the things that Tim mentioned earlier with the, you can go back to the prior slide, if you would, Tim. I'll go back. There you go. So the Churchill, the logistics and access to the customer, the labor base, and are very very strong attributes of this site. This is just a snapshot of our e-commerce activity. We've got over 60 projects either underway or complete, totaling about 35 million square feet, 24 markets, with 10 different e-commerce tenants. By far, Amazon's the largest, and we're excited to help provide the path for their becoming part of the community and to make their business more efficient in getting products to their customers. Okay, go ahead. This is a little bit of our Northeast experience. As Tim mentioned, I started about 20 years ago in the Northeast, and we've worked through about 18 million square feet of projects from Virginia to New England, including the project in Findlay Township. We're based out of Allentown, Pennsylvania. We have a long track record in Pennsylvania. I would say of the 18 million square feet that we've done in the Northeast, at least half of it's in Pennsylvania, mainly between Carlisle and Allentown. But we've had a really good success story in Findlay Township with the project there that has just been completed. Next slide, please. This is just a little bit more detail on 20 or so projects that I've personally been involved in the Northeast. As I mentioned, we're very proud of our track record. We're very proud of our impact on each and every one of these communities. And we believe that this is the conversion of this property from a blighted, underutilized, environmentally challenging site is right in our wheelhouse of projects, similar projects that we've done throughout the Northeast. Next slide, please. Like I said, we're very proud of the impact we've had on these communities. Just the weekly payroll and the jobs and the tax revenue have the ability to transform lives, make a school district better, provide jobs that are where individuals have access to full benefits package, and the impact of those jobs on the families and the communities is very enriching, fulfilling part of what we do. Our flagship, we're jumping around here a little bit. Our flagship project is north of Fort Worth, Texas. We call it Alliance, Texas. It's essentially an entire city that we have built, over almost $10 billion invested. And the short story is over 62,000 employees work there. Texas is, everything's big and things in Texas don't fit everywhere. But this is a track record that we're very proud of, and we've transformed these communities and really brought in new jobs and investment to change the communities. Next slide, please. This is the project in Findlay Township. We just completed it in the last 30 days. Tim's been on the case for over a year. It's just over 1 million square feet. This building is a little bit less employee intensive than the one we're proposing for Churchill, but nonetheless, there's 800 full-time employees will be working out of this project. This doesn't count the construction impact. Project like this will take, the project in Churchill will really take 2 years to build. There'll be 300 to 500 more construction workers on site day in and day out for at least 2 years. Huge shot in the arm for contractors and labor organizations and for the community at large. Okay. This is an interesting project. I kind of think it's an interesting parallel to Churchill. This was a former Pratt & Whitney manufacturing plant where it produced components for aircraft engines going back to World War II. Very environmentally contaminated. A lot of work went into this for many years to get it cleaned up. But it has, it's turned into a building that's very similar to the one that will be built in Churchill. $250 million investment, 1,800 full-time jobs. This project was warmly embraced by the community, and it had sat Very similarly, it had sat idle for over 20 years, and with no jobs, not really paying any taxes, and it was also some environmental exposure involved that's all been addressed. You'll notice if you look at this building, go back slide, please. Go back, the gray part of the roof is a partial solar installation. Virtually all of these buildings are covered on the top with solar panels. Amazon has a very strong commitment to carbon neutral, and there will be more and more initiatives by them for electric vehicles, solar, water usage minimization, just to name a few. So I'm going to let somebody else take over now.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Sean, I believe you're up.
Okay. Hello, I am Sean Gallagher. I'm a land use and zoning attorney with Buchanan Ingersoll and Rooney, and myself and AJ Schwartz with Environmental Planning and Design will discuss the proposed curative amendment. AJ, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Sean.
Okay.
Turn my camera on.
If you want to introduce yourself and what EPD is.
Andrew Schwartz with Environmental Planning and Design. I'm the director of the studio. I've been practicing landscape architecture and community planning for almost 30 years.
Okay. And municipal planning is a key component of your practice, correct?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. So we reviewed, as Leif mentioned earlier, Ordinance 750, which was the zoning amendment the borough adopted in August 2019 that created the warehouse distribution center use and permitted it as a conditional use only allowed in the C2 district. And we reviewed it to determine whether it provided for its fair share of the warehouse distribution center use. So just as a general matter, some principles to keep in mind. All municipalities must provide for all lawful and legitimate uses somewhere in the municipality. If the use is not provided for, results in unconstitutional exclusionary zoning. Exclusionary ordinances take two forms, de jure and de facto. A de jure exclusion exists where the ordinance on its face categorically bans a use. It's pretty black and white, doesn't require much analysis. A de facto exclusion exists where an ordinance permits a use on its face, but when other factors are applied, the use is nonetheless prohibited. And as we're seeing here, this is the borough zoning map. And what we're dealing with is a de facto analysis. As you can see, the borough's divided into 7 different zoning districts, 5 residential, 2 commercial. And the C2 district, as you can see, constitutes about 5% of the borough. So on its face, it provides sufficient area for a warehouse distribution center. However, as Mr. Schwartz will get into, when you start digging into the other ordinance requirements that apply and other factors, it's not really 5% of the borough that's available for a warehouse distribution center use. So AJ, if you want to discuss some of the parcels in the C2 district.
Yeah, and what we fundamentally did, the C2 district is broken really into 3 geographic areas. We just, in terms of this discussion or the analysis, kind of referred to them as the cluster of lots that make up A, and that's up in the kind of the upper center of the map. There's another cluster, which is actually only 1 lot, which is right where the cursor is now, where we refer to that as B. And then there's a 3rd cluster, which is over on the far right side. Again, just a single parcel that makes that district. We refer to that as C. The acreages literally range and starting with C, that C2 parcel over there is only around a half acre in size. The other cluster in terms of B is about a little more than 1 acre in size. So again, from a permitting a use in terms of a distribution center on a half acre parcel or 1 acre parcel really isn't practical for all intents and purposes. So I think we kind of put those parcels to the side. And while a lot was color coded to be in the C2 district and a use was allowed there, in all practicality, you could never develop that use. So when you apply the standards, by the time you apply the setbacks, et cetera, there's really no developable area on that half acre lot. I mean, that's literally the size of a single family lot in the borough itself. So if we could go back over to the cluster A, there's 8 parcels that make up that cluster. A lot of you are familiar with that area. It's largely parkland in some case, in most cases. There is also easements that run with the land in terms of this parcel, which restrict the land use to really just be open space use.
So the next slide.
Yeah, this one drills in a little bit better. It's probably very difficult for you to be able to see the lot and block numbers. The analysis that we provided the borough as a part of Hillwood's submission gives kind of an enumeration of this. What we did is we started to look at each of those parcels. We were able to kind of inventory the amount of acreage that is in each of those parcels, and the ones that do have some sort of restriction, or in some cases, some of the land is actually within right-of-way, particularly for the ramp in terms of getting on the parkway. All that land obviously is not developable. And we also went and looked at the slope condition in terms of the property. Again, you guys are probably pretty familiar with that area. There's a good bit of terrain, and actually, if you look in the totality of that entire area, a good bit of it, 42% of the acreage is in slopes greater than 25%. So as we work kind of through the Aggies or the park easement, the covenant that runs on the land really kind of eliminates 6 of the 8 parcels in that cluster. You can't develop distribution center because of the easement. So that really left 7 and 8 parcels, what we refer to as parcels 7 and 8. And Sean, I don't know if you're running the screen, if you can point to those 2 or not.
It's the one that's not colored green.
Right, 375. So the one that was where the cursor is right now is a little bit over, in terms of acreage, over 12 acres. Once we go and we take a look at slopes and things like that, that really would allow about 7 acres for the distribution center type of use. Once we apply all the other requirements that are within the C2 zoning district. So when you go back and you look at the 7 acres to the overall totality of the acreage within the borough, that's less than 1% of the land area would be able to be used for distribution center.
And 1% threshold, anything under 1% has been held consistently to be de facto exclusionary, correct?
In the eyes of, again, I'm not an attorney, but in the eyes, I think, of the land use experts, the legal experts, they would refer to that as a modicum. And yes, that appears to be kind of the threshold that is kind of used in terms of what would be considered de facto.
And to cure that the exclusion, we proposed that the C1 district also be allowed, and that provides for its fair share. Do you agree?
Correct. Yes.
Thank you. That's all we have.
All right, thank you. Overall, just we're kind of wrapping up our presentation for tonight. Wanted to once again thank everybody for giving us the time to present, and would love to open it up for comments, questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation, very informative. I guess we will move on to the next portion of our meeting, which is to have public comment. Alex, are you able to see if anybody wants to raise their hand and add them in to be able to speak?
Yeah, so at this time, if people are interested in speaking, we ask that they limit their time to 3 minutes or less, state their full name and their complete street address. But we do ask that they raise their hand. Tim, why don't you go ahead and stop sharing your screen so we can go to the Hollywood Squares view, so to speak, and people can see. We do ask, just as a kindness, to turn your camera on. That's not a requirement. But again, in order to speak, we do ask that you raise your hand, and I'll go ahead and unmute you as I mute myself. And Daniel, I think you're first up here, so I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, and I will one at a time work through them. Again, state your name, your street address, and if you can't turn your camera on, we greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Alex, the only other thing I'd mention is, we're asking residents, because there are a lot of people, we want to make sure we hear everyone tonight, that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
You can go ahead, Daniel.
Yes. Sorry about that. I just wanted to bring up the on-ramp inbound to Pittsburgh, because I don't feel that that's been addressed in this traffic study. There's many homes flanking that on-ramp, including mine, with potential truck traffic 24/7. What's going to be done about that?
So Daniel, what I need you to do, again, each speaker, I'm asking you to put, say your full name and your complete street address. The speaking of the public is limited to taxpayers and residents. So we want to make sure whoever's speaking actually lives in the borough.
Yes, I am a taxpayer and resident residing at 2271 McCray Road. My name is Daniel Strand.
And let me just say, Mr. Strand, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Graziani, but Mr. Strand, there's not going to be a question and answer. That's not the process here. So if you do have any additional comments beyond the, the traffic and the on-ramp, you have some additional time we can move on to the next person.
Okay, no, I will take the opportunity then to speak further. Not only is existing on-ramp in close proximity to several residences, but it's not suitable for truck traffic. Trucks hit the guide rail, signage, and utility pole on a regular basis. Many homes and area residents would be adversely impacted by the ongoing truck traffic, air, and noise pollution as consequence of the 24/7 operation. That's essentially my point, for those of us living close by this is not an asset to the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello?
They're calling you.
Tom would be next. Tom Borellis.
Go ahead, Tom.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. All right, good. Tom Borellis, 1634 Jamestown Place, resident of Churchill for 50 years. Hello to AJ, if you're still on there. I see in the agenda that there are two items here that need to be voted on or given consideration. One is a discretionary and the other is a curative. I think that a lot of our residents were hoping for something more than a distribution center. However, I think we're all aware of the realities of what our dreams might be will never happen. And so now we're dealing with another option. And I think this option needs to be considered more than what you have in your curative proposal. I think it's a situation where Amazon is advertising for the $2 billion they're going to spend. Well, I think Churchill would like to have at least 500 million of that. So this facility might be more than just your standard, let's flatten out this grade, put the building there and meet the parking requirements. My thoughts, these are my thoughts, are that there's no problem in suggesting that you want to have a distribution center added in. And so the discretionary item to me would be no problem. It's just a change that we'd have to deal with. However, the curative I would put in the trash until more thoughts are given to this, because I think that the fear I would have in the curative would be we would basically be accepting the site plan you have here, and that site plan is totally inadequate. And what was talked about earlier as one example, the parking study is not complete. It does not deal with all the issues off the site. And I think these are things that we would want to have taken care of first. So I would hope that the best you would do is the discretionary recommendation, but the curative one I would put in the trash. Thank you.
So the person who's identified as iPhone and has their hand up, would you please write your name or rename yourself? When I let you in, I need you to also state your full name and your complete street address.
Hi, Alex. That's Matt Castiglia, I think. I can't, I'm not sure how to do it on my iPhone here to rename myself, but Matt Castiglia, 3810 Burnaby Drive, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I guess my comments would be that, you know, overall, I think that the Churchill Borough is not served well by a blighted property either. You know, a property that's decaying and has been open and available for quite some time and hasn't had very much interest. So overall, I am supportive of the idea of the project. I do have some questions or comments based on what was presented. One was, you know, that it was said that the traffic study showed it would be adequate. You know, to me, that doesn't convey that everything was taken into account. I'd like to understand more about that. I'd like the, you know, the Borough Council to dig more into that and ask for further study on that. I think it was brought up by one of the other residents that, you know, yeah, this inbound ramp into the facility would be great, but there's some other things that need to, I think, be addressed on that. And, you know, we need to understand what adequate means. How does it compare to what we actually experience right now? Are there improvements in certain areas? You know, are there areas where it is going to be worse than it is currently, et cetera? And then the other question that I had was specific to, you know, understanding, I guess, the partnership and kind of the long-term, you know, what can Churchill expect besides just tax revenue? You know, what kind of partnership do they want to bring to the community, you know, besides just jobs and tax revenue? What are they going to do to help ensure the long-term success and, you know, continued, I guess, partnership and good working between the borough and, you know, the company that's coming in, the development and future endeavors? Thank you.
Thank you.
So Susan Starrett, I think you have your hand up and I'm going to unmute you here, or go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. I just have a few questions about the presentation, about things I'd like included. The first one is the impacts are not going to just be after it's built, but during construction. And you did touch on that a bit, but I think we need more detail about what kind of machinery is going to be, how it's going to get to the site. What about the boom and bust? Are you going to do something to make sure it's not a whole bunch of people coming in, raising the rents? And in 2 years, there's actually there could be a big impact on the community. We know we've seen that with fracking work crews and rents rising and things like that. So I'd like that during construction to be more detailed. The second thing has to do with the tax revenue. I mean, it's all good. It's all well and good to predict the tax revenue, but if you're asking us to make a commit, you know, if you're claiming that as something to make a decision on, do you have any contingencies if the tax revenue doesn't rise? The school district is planning on it. Or are you willing to put some money into a escrow or something to make up for it if the economy doesn't meet your predictions? Third, let's see. The third thing is about the remediation costs. I'm wondering what kind of alternatives for remediation have been considered. Two things I wondered about. One is alternatives like constructed wetlands, which would have all kinds of benefits in terms of, you know, ecological benefits. But the second thing is when you remediate a site, so everything has to go somewhere. So I wonder if you could tell us where this is going to go. Is this going to be dumped on somebody else in Pittsburgh? What are the details of the remediation? Maybe you've already done it, and I haven't had time to go through the whole report, so I apologize if that's the case. The fourth thing is, I'm just curious. So you've committed to what the use will be, but I mean, you've told us what the use will be, but what's to constrain the use from being different? What's to constrain Amazon, you from deciding that you're going to make it, whoever has the logistics center, oh, we've changed our minds. We're going to have tractor trailer trucks now. We're going to use it as a little different way. You know, what leverage would the community have if that happened? I'm just curious whether packages come and go from even under the use that you have. It looks like there's going to be more than people in there. So that was, yeah, just more detail on, you've told us what it's not going to be. Is that my time up?
Almost 15 seconds.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ken Balke, you're next.
Okay, thank you. My name's Ken Balke. I live at, when my wife is with me here, Ruth Ann, we're at 2007 Hampstead Drive in the Royal Oak Plan. I chair the tree committee for the borough, and I'm a former 42-year veteran of Westinghouse, and I worked at the Westinghouse site and very familiar with it. I have two questions, one dealing with Westinghouse and the second about the site itself. First question is, when I looked at the map you presented, it appears that the proposed building will essentially take the site of where several buildings reside right now. And many people on here may not realize the C1 district's actually broken into two parcels. There's the 130 plus parcel that's under discussion here. But then there's a smaller parcel that Westinghouse still operates two laboratories today. And it appeared from your drawing, I didn't speak to it, that it looked like you're building a new roadway for the Westinghouse employees to get to those two laboratory sites that are still in use. And that was one question. And if you do, I'm familiar with that property, but you're gonna have to remove a lot of trees to put that road in. Okay, so that's one question. The second question is, your proposed site is where the existing buildings are today, very open space, and your proposed parking, which goes towards the parkway, is all open now just with grassland. And I like seeing that you have trees that you plan to put in, and the pictures you have from your drawings were quite attractive. But I want to alert you to something. So the question is, at this time with this site, it appears that, are you leaving the southern part of the property undisturbed, which is a huge green space at this point? And the question is, you leave it that way, or do you open up for the residents for walking or, you know, other uses? Or is it a case where Amazon gets this built, you get this building in, you say, wow, this is really working out well, so we're going to put a second building down below. And it gets to the question the other, my fellow resident had about once it's in, then what the possibility is going. And the reason I bring that up as a concern is, as a developer, hope you historically look at, we have had some very serious stormwater runoff issues. And the tree removal is a big contributor to that. And in fact, in 2004, I was working at the site when Hurricane Ivan struck. And I drove up Buell Road in the early afternoon in 2 feet of water that was pouring off the site. And of course, it flooded all the homes and the place below us. So my point is to the developers, you get in and say, hey, we got in there, now we're going to do this next step. I would really implore it more for our planning commission. You got to be very careful if you further develop, because you will have you're going to pose all the homeowners down on Buell Road. You're posing a significant threat to them. So I'll leave my comments there.
Thanks, Ken. You're about 5 minutes over, or 5 seconds over 3 minutes. So way to go. Heidi, you're next.
Hi, I'm Heidi Paluski. I live at 760 Margaretta Street. Everybody has made some really good points. I was very curious as how you can have a fulfillment distribution center without truck traffic, as you said, and no vans. So that was a very interesting statement. I think I'd like to learn more about that. I know that there was some, I stumbled across a news article about construction workers at the Findlay site not being local. I'm certainly hoping that Hillwood would not make that mistake here. I also agree with the on-ramp traffic. Anybody exiting from that facility looks like they're going to go down to the Greensburg Pike on-ramp to get back into Pittsburgh, or down possibly, like, they have 2 choices to go east, and neither of those are very well designed for heavy traffic. As to the roundabout, this is an interesting thing. We're going to have a new roundabout, the first in the district. I'm really hoping that people understand how to navigate roundabouts now. I'm really, really concerned. And if you have a really good working relationship with the borough, why do you find the need to, extensively talk about a curative zoning amendment? I've read over the document that the borough submitted, and I'm definitely in favor of us being able to word it the way we want, rather than being stuck with wording that someone else desires. So, and then I am also very, very concerned about the runoff. I remember that 2004 event. We've had other flooding events of Beulah because of construction elsewhere. Anytime you disturb the dirt, contrary to what it appears, that's when more runoff occurs. I've been involved with the Turtle Creek Watershed Association, and I've learned a lot. So I'm very concerned that your retention ponds are kind of not in the right place. And that's it.
Thank you. So Eric Grotzinger, you're next. Eric, go ahead. Grotzinger, go ahead and unmute yourself, sir.
Okay. I think I'm good now. Eric Grotzinger, 2373 Hollywood Drive in the Black Ridge area. There's some really good questions tonight and concerns, but we have a blighted site that's been unproductive for 20 years. And there's an old Bob Dylan song in which there's one line in the song that says, "Those who aren't busy born are busy dying." And this is a chance, I believe, with this site for us to be born and to get this community going forward. And there's a lot of good concerns. Hillwood's looks like they have a great track record, and I'm sure they'll address these concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex?
Alex, you muted.
Kevin McGuire, please unmute yourself.
Good evening, Kevin McGuire, 44 Garden Terrace. I was really impressed with the presentation and the plans that were presented. I had done some reading prior to tonight's meeting and attended a meeting this summer, and I was really impressed with the presentation.
What was impressive about that presentation?
And when you think about innovation, Westinghouse was the innovation of its time, right? Today, it's Amazon. And I am excited by that prospect for us here in Churchill. And I'm excited by the innovation that I see Amazon having as a company. So what it looks like now may definitely improve in the future in terms of the innovation. I am a 14-year employee of the Woodland Hills School District, and I have sat every June on pins and needles as the district tries to pass the budget, furlough employees, cut essential services. This moving in this direction will save the Woodland Hills School District, absolutely, and will help thousands of children in our region, will help thousands of parents of those children or other residents with jobs. It's truly something that could revitalize our community. And I was on a meeting Monday night. We talked about young families leaving the area, leaving Churchill when they have to make a decision about school. I think that decision is going to be far more difficult in terms of should I leave Churchill, because I have a feeling that with the increased tax revenue, the positivity, the jobs, Woodland Hills is going to be a happening place more than it is already for positive education for our students. So thank you.
Paul Welsh, please unmute yourself.
Yes, Paul Welsh, 2606 McCready Road. I heard Chris Prisk speak about the dual roundabout. I live on McCready Road. It is difficult at best pulling out of McCready Road onto Beulah. Well, maybe a dual roundabout would be okay, but in addition to that, perhaps build an exit ramp out of the property headed east and or westbound directly onto 376. That's all I have.
Thank you. Barry Kisloff, please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Just a couple of points. Do we have any input from PennDOT? In a variety of council meetings, we've heard news that PennDOT is doing a study of the impact of this development. So my first question for the developers is, do we have any input from PennDOT? The second thing relates to item number 33, section 3B of their curative amendment. And what it says is that applicants shall make any improvements required to mitigate excessive impacts on traffic and to ensure traffic safety. If I was writing this with a view towards calming the waters, I wouldn't necessarily use mitigate. I would use the word cure, resolve, correct, rectify. Mitigate is a word that you can mitigate something and still have a horror show. And so that section 3B, item 33, is a little disconcerting. My final question for the developer relates to item 15 of the curative amendment. The very last sentence is, and I quote, "Large properties located near highways in commercial and industrial areas are ideal candidates," close quote. I was unaware that Churchill was a commercial or industrial area. So I just raised the question of why us Why here? Given the limitations of access to 376, given the limitations of 376, particularly going westbound, why were we so fortunate to get this? Now, I will say that within the context of the fact that I think this is a great idea. I think it will help the area immensely, but there are certain unsettling factors here, particularly related to traffic, that I think much of the community is very concerned about. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, Megan, I don't see anyone else who has their hand raised. So if you want to give one more moment for people to do that, and then once that moment passes, we will go into your portion as the Planning Commission, comments or questions and or action. No more hands have been raised. Megan, you may have the floor.
Okay. What we have to vote on tonight is whether to simply put, do a zoning amendment voluntarily, which would encompass the suggestion in the language in the documentation that's been submitted by the borough, and it would be the proposed ordinance 755, which is a voluntary action. We understand that there may be a challenge if it's not passed or recommended, that there may be a curative action proceeding by Hillwood. The reading of ordinance 755 makes this a conditional use. And from what I am reading in 304-37-1, the definition of distribution center and the proposed conditional use, you can fiddle with the language, but it takes into consideration some pretty major issues that they have to look into, do a traffic study and make sure it does not have a material negative impact on the neighborhood. There's a limitation on the height, when Hillwood talked about that, not really being able to see it. Certainly the buildings are higher now than is contemplated for the current distribution. The amendment also requires that the applicant prepare a parking study subject to the review and approval of the borough engineer. Lighting has to be addressed. Noise has to be addressed. Environmental impacts have to be addressed. And then there's also a wishful thinking clause that says applicant will make a reasonable efforts to utilize environmentally positive design criteria for the distribution center where feasible. I was involved with the comprehensive planning, and as said by several people before, if the uses contemplated were always to be somewhat more complementary to the borough as it stands right now, with a mixed use if possible. But after 20 years, we see that has not come to be. And in fact, we're watching some deterioration of the mixed use plans around the city. So, I find that, I'm supportive of the amendment. Dick, I don't know, do you want to speak?
Yes, I'd like to speak. I just have a question for the developers, whoever wants to speak on behalf of developers. And I think the question was brought up by a lot of the citizens who spoke. And I think the presentation said, and I wrote it down, there will be a minimal amount of truck traffic. There was a discussion about trucks being the trailer trucks, vans, and employees. And then I think he said it would be only trucks and employees, no vans. Somebody raised a question from the community that how can you have a distribution center with minimal truck traffic? And that's a question I have also. So I guess my question to the developer, and again, whoever wants to answer it, please feel free to speak up, is can you explain more what the truck traffic will be, what it will be comprised of, what type of vehicles, and why was it said that there will be a minimal amount of truck traffic? And also, I'm curious, why is this an employee-intensive site as opposed to the Finley site, which was, I guess, a more truck-intensive site? So if you could answer those questions or explain that a little bit better to the community, I think we'd appreciate it.
This is Gary Frederick. I'll be happy to try to address that. Chris Prisk is our traffic engineer. Chris, feel free to comment on what I have to say. So this, there were several questions there. One is the question of vans. So we see these delivery vans in neighborhoods that are actually handing the product over to the customer. And so those vehicles work from a completely different type of building than what we're proposing here. So that we call those buildings the last mile. And so this building ships in bulk to the last mile facility. So tractor trailers leave this building full and go to last mile facilities where the individual packages are dispatched through many of these smaller vans to go into the neighborhoods on a zip code or sub-zip code basis to perform the delivery. So the concentration of the small van traffic does not occur at this building. This building, Amazon breaks these buildings into the type of merchandise that's in the building. So for simplicity's sake, I would describe that as small, medium, and large. So small might be anything that could fit in a bread box, or some, a small item. The medium-sized items are what we have at Finley, and that's bigger than a bread box, but one person can still pick it up. And then large would be furniture, appliances, mattresses, big TVs, patio furniture, lawnmowers, that type of stuff, that more than one person is required to move that. So this facility is employee intensive because they're handling thousands and thousands of these small items, and a tractor trailer can hold a very, very large amount of this product, just because it's the little small envelopes that we get from Amazon if you're a customer. So this one there's much more employee touches, handling of those small pieces of merchandise, trying to put multiple pieces of merchandise in one box or one envelope to go to the customer. So this is much more employee intensive and lower on the truck intensity scale. It's just the nature of their business. This is a far more complex operation, a much larger investment. The investment for this building will be more than 2 times the investment for the Finley building, just because of the nature of the technology and robotics that are going to be employed within the facility to move all these small pieces of merchandise. So Chris can talk to the amount of truck traffic, but it is a relatively small amount of truck traffic for a building this size because of the small size of the product and the amount of handling that's required for each order. I don't know, Chris, do you want to add on to what I had to say, or maybe clarify anything?
I think you did a great job, Gary. I was trying to maybe overly simplify things, and I apologize if I led some of you astray, but what Gary said was spot on. So yes, there is truck traffic, But if you had to summarize what this facility generally produces, it's employee vehicular traffic. And so during the peak hours, there's a total of maybe 20 trucks over the hour, and that's both in and out. And that kind of, over the course of the day, that kind of summarizes what you're looking at. Whereas, the employees are, maybe a total of 400, 500 during an hour during that shift change. So you can see how it compares and why I would classify this as more of the, employee use. Some other things I just wanted to quickly just clarify, because traffic came up a little bit. The intersection of William Penn and the Parkway on-ramp, that intersection is included in our study, and it was analyzed. So that touches on one of the things that said, if I use the word adequate, I'll use the more professional term of acceptable levels of service. That's kind of the traffic term that we use. We compare intersection operations for existing conditions, which is right now what you're experiencing. We compare them for a no-build condition, which is a few years in the future with some growth in the area, but no development. And then we compare them to a build condition, which is that same few years in the future, but with our development. And for a traffic study to be approved, you have to illustrate that your build condition doesn't add 10 seconds or more overall to the intersection as it was operating without the development. And so our study shows that, in areas where we would be degrading more than 10 seconds, we need to provide, and we use that term mitigation, which I think somebody else raised that they didn't really like mitigation, but it's kind of a technical term we're stuck with. So we were able to mitigate all our impacts with those proposed improvements, and all the intersection operations are level of service C or better, which is really good. Level of service D or better is considered acceptable. So we're even better than what's kind of technically considered acceptable. And then there was another one that, a comment, somebody lived on McCready Road. That intersection also was included in our study. And our analyses are showing that the dual roundabout will give you more gaps to pull out of McCready. Essentially right now, the issue you're having is traffic backs up from the traffic signal, and so you can't get out. So the dual roundabout will provide more gaps to address that problem that you're experiencing. And then as far as input from PennDOT, yes, we've gone through 3 different preliminary submissions in which we kind of vetted all the inputs for the traffic study. And then now we're into this, I think, the second round of submission for the traffic study itself. So PennDOT has been involved. They've been providing input, as well as the borough and the county, all during these different iterations. So I think I was able to hopefully clarify those comments.
This is Megan Hartman. A question I have, and I don't have it written down. How many employees do you estimate up at the facility?
I think our number's 1,400.
Okay. Do you happen to know how many at the height of Westinghouse was up at that facility?
Yeah, there were 1,900.
Okay, with the existing infrastructure as it is right now.
Right.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, may I add one more thing on traffic? A couple of questions were asked about the possibility of adding a new on-ramp onto the Parkway traveling west. And I just wanted to give a quick status update about that. So we've heard that issue raised by the borough, and we understand why that's been raised. And so what Hillwood has done is we went to, there's a regional body that handles traffic called the Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission. And they have a a process to evaluate significant highway improvements. They call their transportation improvement plan. So working with the county executive, Rich Fitzgerald, we were able to have the study of the ramp added to that commission's plans for the next year. And so Hillwood has committed to fund what's called a point of access study to evaluate that ramp. And so that study, since it's a federal highway, that study has to be vetted both by PennDOT and also by the Federal Highway Administration. So they'll evaluate whether they think it's needed and whether the benefit of that ramp outweighs, the cost, both in monetary terms and also in terms of the disruption to the community during construction and to the overall operation of the highway. And Hillwood further committed that if it comes to that, if it develops to that point, that they would also pay for the design of that ramp. So we've heard that comment loud and clear from the community, and we're committed to helping to study the problem further, and we'll continue to do that.
Okay, I have another question as well. I saw on some of the maps that there is contemplated to be a noise wall constructed. So can somebody give some background on what that is and where that would be?
Yeah, Chris Westbrook, are you on?
Yes, I am.
You could field that.
So there will be sound walls proposed on either side of the site to attenuate sound from leaving the property.
So that would it surround the site? Is that what you're saying?
It is on both the west and east sides of the site, between the truck court and the residential, adjacent residential properties.
Okay.
Let me, I'd like to address one other question that I believe Mr. Balke raised about the southern portion of the site. Southern portion of the site is largely undevelopable, and we will be managing stormwater flows by, obviously according to regulation, but I think there's very little that can be developed on the southern end of the site just because of the terrain. Tim or Chris Westbrook, did you have maybe want to comment on that?
Gary, what you said is accurate. There's no plans to develop on that southern portion of the site.
Is that where the big hill is, or the big runoff right now?
There is significant drop off over in that area.
Okay. And then, and also the conditional use is addressing lighting. Now, we didn't have a lot of people talk about that or ask questions, but, and again, I know that people don't like the term mitigate, but are there plans to mitigate the disturbance from the lighting?
Yeah, we have a photometric study being done right now to help show what the mitigation plan would be for any light impact.
So, and is this a situation where, from a noise perspective, you'll hear backup lights from any of the access points or backup alarms?
We've got the Acoustical study being done, but that's part of why the acoustical sound walls are being installed, is to create that barrier to contain the noise to the site.
Okay. And then I see that you estimate $8 million for environmental cleanup. I believe that was it. Is that primarily asbestos? Or is there soil impacts or?
We've done our phase 1 study. There's asbestos within the existing buildings that are proposed to be demolished. We're currently just starting our phase 2 study, which would be the ground remediation. So we don't have all that data on hand yet, but it's anticipated.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, can I just have a quick question? I might have completely missed this for anyone on the development team. I noticed some references in the PowerPoint as to the square footage of the facility, and I noticed it was 800,000 square feet. And maybe I had a misunderstanding here. Is that the footprint, or is that the actual proposed square footage of the structure itself?
That 800,000 square feet is the footprint of the building. It's a multi-level facility that will be approximately 3.5 million square feet when completed.
Okay, sorry, if you said that already.
No worries.
Dick, do you have any more questions,
I do not.
comments?
No, I don't.
All right.
I would like to ask a question. Larry Servine?
Sir, at this point, the public comment portion is over, and it is the planning commission's floor right now. So unfortunately, we will have a meeting in November, a couple meetings on this subject where public will be able to comment at that time.
Okay.
Madam Chairman?
Okay. At this time, I would like to make a recommendation that we adopt the voluntarily zoning ordinance 755, as a proposed 755, and do the voluntary recommendation to have Borough Council review and adopt that ordinance.
I'll second that motion.
That being second, and there's 3 of us, there's a quorum, the motion is carried. I want to thank everybody for their participation. It's a very important, I think that the big laboring oar now is to get to the conditional uses and make sure that everybody's satisfied that the project can be done within the confines of the ordinance, if Borough so chooses to pass the ordinance.
Ms.
Again,
Harmon, I apologize. This may be next on your agenda, but the commission will need to make a recommendation, if possible, on the proposed curative amendment application as well.
That being said, I recommend passing the curative amendment as well.
I'm not going to second that motion.
Okay. That motion was defeated. Are we good yet, Gavin?
I think you are. Yeah, I think there's no other business. You can go ahead and move to adjourn unless Mr. Graziani has anything else we need to cover before we end the meeting.
I just think that the timeline going forward, on November 2nd, there will be a public hearing where a presentation by Hill will be made before council. On November 16th, Monday, November 16th at 7 p.m., there will be a special meeting for council to vote on the amendment. If the amendment passes, the discretionary amendment, then we won't have a hearing on December 7th for the curative amendment. However, if it doesn't pass on December 7th, Monday, December 7th at 7 p.m. or 6 p.m., there'll be a hearing for the curative amendment. These will be advertised. They'll be up on the web as well as the background documentation as well.
Okay, so quickly again, what were the dates for the next one, November 2nd? Did you say?
November 2nd is the public hearing. There will be no action at the regular meeting on November 9th. There will be a special meeting on November 16th to vote on the discretionary text amendment. And if that fails, then the hearing on the curative amendment will be held on December 7th.
Okay.
I'm sorry, say those dates again. Because I have November 2nd as the hearing. Did you?
November 2nd is the hearing on the discretionary text amendment.
Okay.
November 16th is the special meeting to vote on the discretionary text amendment. And December 2nd is the hearing on the curative amendment should council turn down the discretionary text amendment in November.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, to clarify the last date, it's Pearl Harbor Day. December 7th will be the date. It's the first Monday of December where the curative amendment, if necessary, hearing will take place.
Okay. Well, that being said, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. On behalf of Hillwood, we really appreciate your time tonight and your earnest consideration of this matter.
Well, thank you and your whole crew for attending. We appreciate it. I'm sure we'll have many more questions.
I'm sure. Okay.
That being said, we're adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Appreciate it.
Thank you.